Hello, it's Albert Dom, and we are on Canto 26 this week. This cartoon has some particular relevance since this PowerPoint for Canto 26 has ballooned into about 63 slides. I could actually balloon it into more, but I just got fascinated about this canto. It just shows that you can get something different each time that you look through Dante's Divine Comedy. I've read it several times, and it's only this time that this particular canto caught me, and I hope that it will catch you. But since I have 63 or so PowerPoint slides, I can't do it all in a week, and as I've already explained, we're going to do it in 2 weeks. So this is really just a start, a warm-up, so to speak. And as I say, this particular canto has caught my eye for various reasons. In particular, how it resonates with our culture. I try to show that resonation through various cantos, but this one will see how it resonates through Tennyson, a 19th century British poet, Primo Levi, a Jewish chemist, Auschwitz in the mid-20th century, and then we'll see that Tolkien inspiration from Canto 26 when he was writing The Lord of the Rings, and specifically, or definitely the Silmarillion. We'll talk about all of that as time goes on. Not in this particular YouTube video, but in the one following. This one will just simply set the stage, so to speak, for all this. And so, that in mind, let us begin Canto 26. Be joyful, Florence, since you are so great that your outstretched wings beat over land and sea. Your name is spread throughout the realm of hell. I was ashamed to find among the thieves 5 of your most eminent citizens, fact which does you very little honor. But if early morning dreams have any truth, you will have the fate, in not too long a time, that Prato, the others crave for you. Were this the day, not be too soon. But it have come to pass, since past it must. Longer delay, the more my grief. We started climbing up the stairs of boulders that brought us to the place from where we watched. My guide went first and pulled me up behind him. So to start out Canto 26, he's making a sarcastic, obviously sarcastic, hymn of praise to Florence. That Florence is such a wonderful city. It's in such an important burg that you can hear about it all through hell. It's a little big at Florence here. Continuing, we went along our solitary way, among the rocks, among the ridges, crags, where the foot could not advance without the hand. I know that I grieved then. Now again, I grieve when I remember what I saw. More than ever, I restrain my talent, lest it run a course virtue is not set. For if a lucky star or something better has given me this good, I must not misuse it. As many fireflies, the season when one who lights the world hides his face least, the hour when the flies yield to the mosquitoes, as the peasant on the hillside at his ease sees, flickering in the valley below, where perhaps he gathers grapes or tills the soil, with just so many flames, all the eighth bolgia shone brilliantly, as I became aware when I stood where the depths were visible. So, we start looking at the eighth bolgia. It looks like a bunch of fireflies. Here's something, at least Italy and the American South have in common: fireflies. And I think we have some other things, because he's mentioning it's about the time when the when the mosquitoes start coming out. We all know in the South when that is, especially if you're in the deep South. That's the evening. So the evening the mosquitoes come out, and so do the fireflies. I don't know about you, but I'm certainly more favorably disposed to the fireflies than I am to the mosquitoes. Anyway, that's what the area of the bolgia looked like to him when he's looking over the bridge into it. Now, what they really are, of course, is they're not fireflies, but they're flames that contain center. And Hollander has a commentary about that, as you can read. The flames are as reminiscent of the epistles of James, and behold also the ships, so they be great, so great, are driven by fierce winds, yet have turned about with a very small helm, wherever the steersman pleases. So the tongue is a little member, and boasts many things. Behold, how great a matter a little fire kindles. The tongue is a fire in the world of iniquity. So it is a tongue among our members, and defiles the whole body, sets on fire the course of nature, and is set on fire of hell. And this is a good analogy simply because we know that, or will know as we read through the Canto, that people here are the ones that are false counselors that use their tongues to set people on fire to a false course, and now they are in fire. Now, continuing, as he who was avenged by the bears beheld Elijah's chariot at its departure, the rearing horses took flight towards heaven, and though he tried to follow with his eyes, he could not see more than the flame above alone, like a small cloud once had risen high. So each flame moves itself along the throat of the abyss, none showing what it steals, each one stealing nonetheless a sinner. I was on the bridge, leaning far over, so far that if I had not grabbed some jut of rock, I could easily have fallen to the bottom. My guide, who saw me so absorbed, explained, there are souls concealed within burning fires, each one swathed in his burning punishment. So Virgil tells him what's going on here, that these aren't fireflies. And Dante uses the analogy or metaphor of Elijah in the fiery chariot. You see, here he is, chariot, and this is Elisha seeing him. So he says, just like Elisha, where I see the fire here. In this case, Elisha's case, it was a burning fiery chariot taking Elijah to heaven. Here is hell, and sinners are in flame. Now, talking about the bears, and that is a passage reference, a passage in 2 Kings, chapter 2, verses 23 through 25. And here it is. He went up, and he being, of course, Elisha, he went up there to Bethel. While he was going on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, go up, you bald head, go up, you bald head. And he turned around, and when he saw them, cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys. And there he went on to Mount Carmel, and from there he returned to Samaria. Here we have a medieval picture of it. Here's the bears after the boys. There we see the fiery chariot. And needless to say, this is kind of a odd passage in Scripture. I guess its moral is don't make fun of prophets, or bears don't come eat you. And that's kind of I guess the moral that the bear was like that. Actually, the bear is more like this, and it's pretty ferocious to me. So anyhow, he's comparing fiery chariot. That's just a big metaphor of what's going on here. And at this point, we can see what Dorothy Sayers had to say in her commentary about just the imagery in this entire canto. We have, first of all, the councilors of fraud. Sinners in the bolgia 8 are not men who deceive those whom they counsel, but men who counsel others to practice fraud. These in the bolgia above, all that from the last two cantos, they stole material goods. These are spiritual thieves who rob other men of their integrity. This explains, I think, the name which Dante gives to their punishment. Then we have the thievish fire, the image. Fires which torment also conceals the counsels of fraud. Theirs is a fruited sin. Latin, frutivius, from for thief. As they sin with their tongues, and now speech has to pass through their tongue in the tormenting, thievish flame. This is from a commentary I've mentioned several times before and used. This is Spiritual Direction from Dante, Avoiding the Inferno by Paul Harrison. I recommend it. And he's written also a book on Purgatory. Not Well in Paradise, at least not yet. And here's what he has to say about this portion of Canto 26. Until this point in the narrative, imagery seems quite peaceful, as Dante himself says, like a warm summer evening, until the reality of this light is revealed. Light itself is fraudulent. What it is in reality is not what it appears to be. These flickering lights are not fireflies. They're damned souls. The sinful soul is the wick at the center of the flame. That one flickering light revealed the theft. Each one stows away the sinner's soul. The light of the flame is fraudulent also in its function, because rather than illuminating any useful way, as flames normally do, here the light obscures their identities. Light itself is simple in their genius, has become their punishment, burning but also shedding no helpful light. Reality that he observes is so strange that Dante still stares in wonder until he hears it from Virgil. Couldn't believe his own eyes when Virgil gives him reassurance. Ulysses and Diomedes are punished together because they sin together. We'll meet them in a little bit. This is an important clue. True sin of Ulysses, not the sin he so eloquently counts later in Canto, but the sin he committed with Diomedes, namely the Trojan horse. As two they met God's vengeance, as they sinned and met his wrath. This is the account of his apparently heroic journey is a classic case of misdirection. The speech hides the truth rather than reveals it. Diomedes' presence reminds us of the truth of Ulysses' sin, even if Ulysses himself won't confess it openly to Dante and Virgil. Protagonist's excitement and prospect of seeing Ulysses is evident. Ulysses has not been identified yet. The poet seems to be taking liberty in allowing his character to fathom who it is that's about to appear. And his reckless abandon gain experience of this great sinner resembles Ulysses himself. Oh, master, I replied. What you say I know now I'm right. I've guessed already it might be so. I was about to ask you, who is that flame its tip split in two, like the one which once sprang up from the pyre where Hercules is placed beside his brother? Now, what Dante is referring to here is the war that came between these two brothers, Ulysses and the other. Basically, they were the sons of Oedipus. Oedipus, you get Oedipus complex from a terrible error he did. He killed his father and married his mother on purpose, but he nonetheless did that. And when he died, he had two sons. And the agreement was that one would be king for a year and then switch off to the other. They go back and forth. Well, when one had a year of its reign, he says, well, I don't really think I want to give this up. I'm having a lot of fun. Too bad for you. So I started that war. And they were so estranged from each other that when they were put on the funeral pyre, both of them died in conflict. The flames in the funeral pyre split into two. He said, within, Ulysses and Diomed are suffering in anger with each other. Just vengeance makes them march together now. They lament inside one flame ambush, and the horse come to the gateway that will allow the Romans' noble seed to issue forth. Therein they mourn the trick caused the grief of Epidamia. They still reap sweets for Achilles, and there they pay for the lady. Now, first thing they mention is the gateway, talking about the Trojan horse, and that was Ulysses and Diomed's creation. And why it's said that here that the Romans' noble seed issued forth is that, according to Dante and Virgil, the Roman stock or Roman country or nation originated from the refugees led by Aeneas left Troy after the Trojan War. Thus, they had this adventure forth and it eventually made it to Italy. The second thing about the trick, this lady here, Damia, was the mother of Achilles, and she was something of a demigod or whatever, and she had Achilles. Well, she decided to make him immortal, but did an entirely great job of it. She dipped him in the waters of immortality, but forgot to heal him. So we had the Achilles heel that was vulnerable. Well, there's a prophecy that if Achilles went to war, he would die, and that would be what would be the result of it. So he was hidden in the court of the king, disguised as one of the court women. So I guess this is one of the first examples of dressing in drag or what have you. So he was disguised. Now, Ulysses knew he was there, but how he wanted to figure out who it was. What he did, he and Diomed came into the court. He had all kinds of presents for everyone. He had presents for the women of the court, various cosmetics and things like that. Also, along with the cosmetics, there was a sword and a shield. Well, this guy's Achilles just couldn't resist the sword and the shield and flashing around and everything. This he says, aha, I know who you are, and took him away, went to the Trojan War, and eventually he died. And as far as the palladium, they stole palladium of Athena. So they've been doing, according to Dante, they've done a few little bad deeds here, which is what come up in bad deeds, being bad counsel and such. Now, here is Dr. Barlini's commentary on this area. First thing to know about before tackling Inferno 26, the Canto of Ulysses, said Dante did not read Greek, never read Iliad or the Odyssey. Homer's works were not available in the West till later humanists recovered knowledge of ancient Greek in the texts of Greek antiquity. Dante's Ulysses is entirely mediated through Latin texts, particularly Book 2 and Virgil's Aeneid, and through Cicero's defeating. This is something that I don't think is really general knowledge about evil times, and it should make a logical sense. The basic story of history is that Renaissance covered the ancient knowledge of the Greeks and the Romans. Well, really, what it got specifically was the ancient knowledge of the Greeks, because the Latin texts, by and large, transmitted, understood by the medieval people. That's one thing that the monks did in the monasteries. They laboriously copied not just the scriptures and not just the church fathers, but also Latin classics. And they truly loved learning and were centers of learning. They preserved these texts as best they could. They didn't preserve everything, but they preserved a lot. Well, what also was true is that medieval Western Europe did not understand Greek, not having Greek texts they could decipher. Only at the time of the Renaissance, when Greek scholars fled the collapse of Constantinople, and scholars in Italy in particular started trying to learn and understand Greek, the aid of these scholars who had fled into Italy, that Greek texts began to be deciphered, and the Greek learning came to be understood and influence culture. Now, even that, it has to be understood with the fact that a number of Greek texts were ancient times translated into the Latin, and those Greek texts were known to the Latin West. And if certain Greek texts were not known to the Latin West, as some of the fault of the ancient Romans, who did not feel like those texts were particularly important to transmit or translate into Latin. This would include a number of the philosophical texts and plays and such. The practical stuff, such as Euclid and other stuff like that, were more likely to have been translated into Latin and known in medieval times. So there you have it. And the loss of, by the way, of Greek was coming fairly early in the period that we're talking about. St. Augustine, for instance, in the 4th and 5th century, tried to understand Greek, but could not. So already, at the time of the Roman Empire, you had this split between the west part of the Roman Empire that spoke Latin, east part where Greek was the language of culture and trade, such. Now, read on here, 18. Both negative and positive versions of Ulysses reached the Middle Ages from classical antiquity. Negative Ulysses is portrayed in Book 2 of Virgins in Need, where he's labeled Dirus, that's dreadful, and Sclerum Ventor, advisor of crimes. Virgil's portrayal came to dominate the Latin tradition and later the medieval tradition, reducing the stereotype of a treacherous, sacrilegious warrior that leads directly to Dante's fraudulent counselor, who is punished one flame with his comrade in arms, Diomedes. However, Dante's Ulysses is a complex creation, goes far beyond Virgil's negative portrayal. Dante borrowed also from the positive rendering of Ulysses that was preserved mainly among the Stoics, for whom the Greek hero exemplified heroic fortitude in the face of adversity. Horace praises Ulysses in the Epistle of Ulysses for his discernment and endurance, and especially for his ability to stand the temptations, prove the undoing of his companions. And, more suggestively, in the Finibus, Cicero celebrates minds and innate cravings for learning and knowledge, which he called the lust for learning. As a contemporary lover of wisdom, Cicero presents none other than Ulysses. Cicero interprets Horace's sirens as givers of knowledge. Ulysses' response to their invitation as praiseworthy. He endorses Ulysses' quest, writing, "It is a knowledge the sirens offer. It was no marvel if a lover of wisdom held this dearer than his home." This is suggested because, as we'll see next week, Dante invents an entirely new adventure for Ulysses, where he goes off to search new worlds and sets off beyond the pillar of Hercules into the Atlantic Ocean to see what's there. So it's very reasonably called a lover of knowledge or seeker of new things. Dante's reconfiguring of Ulysses is a remarkable blend of two traditional characterizations that also succeeds in charting an entirely new and extremely influential direction for this most versatile and mystic heroes. And Dante invents a new story, as I just mentioned, never told before. His Ulysses departs from Circe directly for his new quest, pulled not by the desire for home and family, but by the lust of adventure. As the classicist W.B. Stanford points out in the Ulysses theme, place of Homer's centrifugal, homeward bound figure, Dante substitutes a personification of the centrifugal. Stanford offers a remarkable tribute to the importance of Dante's contribution to Ulysses myth. Next to Homer's conception of Ulysses, Dante, despite its brevity, is the most influential in the whole evolution of the wandering hero. Wings of Dante's Alta Fantasia or other fantasy may fail him at the end of the journey. They vouchsafe them remarkable insights along the way. It's indeed a testament to that fantasia that Dante was able to summon the authentic Ulyssean spirit in this brief episode, press his version of that spirit upon our collective imagination. And next week, we'll look at that impression on our collective imagination. Look at, first of all, the spiritual aspects, but also the just pull this has on our imagination. The question is, or will be, I should say, is this voyage of Dante's describing of Ulysses, is it good or is it bad? And we'll look at Tennyson's poem, look at Primo Levi, get that at the Canto Ulysses here in Dante. And we'll also see how J.R.R. Tolkien works with it. And I would have to say that I'm restraining myself because I go really look at several other examples of how this has impacted our culture and our thoughts. And I hope that you find this week interesting. And I hope that you'll find part 2, Canto 26, interesting, and maybe get a glimmer of why I'm doing Canto 26 in 2 parts. Well, that will be it for right now.